this broadcast. Not right now. The sun has arisen for all you cool Yule people. Hope yours was a merry and will be happy. We have some people out in the world that do things. This broadcast will not start with the crickets. And as I was thinking about this, it'll be kind of nice. Maybe we'll just hold the crickets off while we can find some cool stuff going on. Give you an indication of the example that people are giving to us to actually stop the nonsense against us. Pirate Bay co-founder invents an infernal device that will utterly bankrupt the music industry. You know, re-understand this little thing, this little idea here is to understand the problem with the copyrights and the Millennial Digital Act and all the plunder that's going on by the privateers in the industries that want to soak up revenue, profits, which to some point I have no problem with. I mean, people should be paid for what they do. But, you know, it gets kind of beyond. And the Kim.com issue is another, not that I track what he does. I'm real suspicious about what's going on in his case. I've asked him a number of times, why don't they challenge the jurisdiction and the competency of the court and the judges that issued the warrant? That's really the only thing. We talked about this, not bringing up anything really new. Why don't you challenge, the only thing you have is to challenge that warrant that wants to extradite you from New Zealand. Why aren't you challenging that? Well, you know, they never come back to me. Neither him nor his attorney have ever come back. I just sent another one. He's been, based on this issue about copyright infringement. Somebody who's never entered a country, never had any business dealings with a country, is being extradited by a country, third party to him and his activities globally in the digital frontier. This little idea here was pretty fascinating to me. The infernal device should kind of kick it off. This is almost a genius joke, except it has some legs when we understand and start tying into the reality of the fabricated world you live in. The consideration that, you know, when they went to derivatives, and when you look at the block of derivative value versus the actual real money, the actual substance wealth that's been in the world that's created by men and women in their endeavors, their actual extraction from real work, their life being taken up to be paid for by someone else for doing something any one of us may or may not be able to do. We all have our little job to do, the one we choose. Supposedly, that's what we're told. But to see that someone comes up with a machine that feeds into and has its roots in the derivative condition. In other words, if anybody can agree between a contract that has value, that is now defined as monetizable. And then they can bond by insurance that, and they get more monetizing. Because it's all based on the amount of money that's out in promise to be paid in the future. That's your promise to pay. That's the evidence of debt. And that's what I've told you since 1933. Nothing has been done since 1933 that wasn't based on a promise. You're looking in the world at what was done on a puff of air. Someone's promised that in the future you would get paid. And that should astonish you. To me, I just almost in my mind, I just stop. Look at the wondrous things we'll do just being promised something. And that should be really, in a way, an evidence of how little it takes to keep us working. And, money is really irrelevant at that point in my mind. Except that that's how they control you. And that's the secret. That this inventor came up with this device that I looked at. They're claiming it utterly bankrupts the music industry. I looked at it no different than Bitcoin in a way. Because, well, here's the story. The record industry insists that all unauthorized copies represent lost sales. So Peter Broke P, is his name, Peter Sunde, co-founder of the Pirate Bay, has built a machine that makes 100 copies per second of Gnarls Barkley's Crazy, storing them in a dev null, which is to say, deleting them as they're created. The machine, called Copymation, is globbed together out of a Raspberry Pi, some hacky Python that he doesn't want to show anyone, and an LCD screen that calculates a running tally of the damages he's inflicted upon the record industry through its use. The 8 million copies it has made every day costs the record industry $10 million a day in losses. At that rate, they'll be bankrupt in a few weeks at most. Think about that. In this derivative world where nothing actually exists and money is digitized, and all you have to do is agree that there's a value that's being destroyed somewhere to be used by somebody else, where Bitcoin is really just a computer mining digits to come through algorithms, where someone has claimed a loss, and you can make that loss up. Haven't you just fabricated a new derivative market, a new Bitcoin, as I was thinking about this? This is not even on anybody's discussion. This is on the insistence of the industry itself. To quote Kenneth Goldsmith, I think the file sharing trials of this century are going to be our obscenity trials. The claims are never valid. They're never based on actual damage. If that was the case, we wouldn't have been awarded money. The economics work differently in the global networked society, but the industries will not change. That's why we need to take them down, he adds. The Pirate Bay co-founder hopes to finalize 13 copy machines for various exhibitions and plans to sell a few as well. In the meantime, he's continuing to bankrupt poor Gnarls Barkley and his label. The one running at my home is up to 120 million copies as we speak. That equals 150 million in losses to the record industry, following their logic, Peter says. So here we have somebody, in my mind, pretty brilliant idea, even if just an infernal machine, that exposes, again, this is another thing for us to do. Look at this situation, find the lunacy behind it, and expose the lunacy, or feed into the legitimacy of the plunder, which this thing is, why I think it's so brilliant. It does both. And there's more that it does. I don't have really the time to focus on this. This is one of those things you kind of sit and wonder. A machine that creates copies of something someone else finds valuable and destroys them. The creation of which is the value, not the fact that no one even uses it, is a whole of excessive advantage taken by people who overuse this use of privatization in a digital world. We really do have to come up with different thoughts. I think it's all going to be beyond me, but you youngins out there got to really think about this. I thought this was brilliant. Why I didn't want to open up the broadcast with crickets. To me, this is what we do. One of the things we go to start being a force and effect. He's almost saying, well, here, folks, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to cause you some damage you claim that you can't prove, so sue me. You get beyond the fear. You get beyond the loss. You just say, I'm going to just expose this part of this little problem. Like I said, I don't know what'll turn any one of you on, what's your passion, but to me, this is a guy who just said, okay, I'm going to resolve this. At least I'm going to make it an open problem, and I'm going to stand up and I'm going to expose it. So to me, this was an example that you too can do something. Those of you that are into doing this stuff. I thought this was actually based in the derivative. If they can create a derivative and that can be the bulk of your money system, which is it's a crime. Derivatives are a crime on your life, and yet they make up a massive, they dwarf all real money systems. That's why we can see the insanity of the world. But this is I don't think this is a difference, but by degree, on the fabrication of a value for investment purposes. That I believe him mining this record for destruction would be no different than running an algorithm for the creation of Bitcoin that has value. Call it infernal coin or something. I mean, just come up with something. So here's the point. You just make it an issue. Will it go anywhere? Well, I don't know. I don't know if the industry really wants to take this on, because he's already identified the problem. They will make a claim for something that is not valid. Well, isn't that a derivative? So even their claim has to be based on fraud. So this is striking right at the core. This is where you have to go. Another example. Now the TSA can force you to go through the body scanner. If you hadn't heard that story. Remember, I was telling you the incrementalness of this issue. That they now, through a rule change, very important to understand what I've been telling you behind the woodshed all this time about all the places we can go, and it's a low, if no risk to you. The other one the Pirate Bay issue, that might be a little bit of a risk, because you'll become possibly the obscenity trial that Kim.com's trial is going to be. Notwithstanding that they're not answering whether or not, and I haven't heard they have, challenged the warrant of extradition from the United States based on the fact, and I get this not from my opinion, I got this from research and from what we did in our lawsuit, to challenge the judge for his competency in his office, for the competency and establishment of the court being lawful over the subject matter, over the territory. 4 things. They couldn't do any of it. The clerk couldn't do it. The judge couldn't do it. They're incompetent in offices, and more importantly, there is no court that's lawful to issue these things that I wanted him to understand he needs to do, because that was one of the things I remember I read behind the Woodshed, the treaty between the United States, the extradition treaty between New Zealand and the United States. They will not come back and answer that substantive discussion. So now, I've always had this problem with Kim.com and his case. What are they doing? What is the point behind that if they're not going to step up? Now, they're going to go to he lost. He's going to go, they're supposed to be liable to extradition on this digital world condition, this non-existent condition. If you can see this, you can see that the non-existence of something becomes something. You'll realize the illusion that they call your reality. I'm not talking about you living and breathing. I'm talking about your relationship with government, your relationship with those in government, using it as the club to beat you down with. But I've said that there's ways to address this in a way that they've set against us. They've made this an administrative world and administrative law, and so you can use this in a non-threatening way to you to create the issues that you can use to stop them. And one of the things I did was a TSA, and stopping the TSA, and I told you Jesse Ventura did nobody any good service when he didn't listen to the appellate court tell him that his attorney got him in the wrong court too quick, that he didn't exhaust his administrative remedies before the TSA, that his constitutional challenge was not ripe yet, that I said when he didn't use his resources to go after that narrow question, return back to the administration and attack the TSA, he did nobody any good service. That this thing comes on because he and others may not have been properly positioned, that we now get the incremental increase of so-called mandatory body scanning. Apparently no opt-out. But listen to the first sentence, and then I'll move on to somebody, why I'm not playing crickets quite yet. That there are people doing things, and doing essentially exactly, at least procedurally, what I've been asking you all to do or tell other people they can do for themselves. Your next flight might include a mandatory trip through the body scanner, with the U.S. government quietly changing the opt-out rules for searches. In a document published earlier this month, the Department of Homeland Security outlined an update to the advanced imagery technology protocols used by the TSA at U.S. airports, adding a clause, this is contractual, listen very carefully, which allows officers to insist travelers go through the controversial machines. Let's go back up to the first sentence. The government quietly changed the opt-out rules. Well, as I've told you folks, this is an administrative world. Your due process is by the administrative procedures that they've provided for your for the promulgation of rules and the enforcement, that within this rule set there are certain mandatory things on the agencies. One of the things is they can't quietly do anything, actually. And so, thanks to Cowboy Tech, dropped a link on one of the RLM chat here before Rum Ding Dong, and it is somebody who I think his website says it all. He's the professionaltroublemaker.com. That he has actually been, since a few years, suing the TSA. Corbett sues TSA over new policy to refuse opt-outs, is what he just filed based on this rule. And I've gotten the links for you through Cowboy Tech, and I've gotten some other links to his documents. It's no longer a secret pretty much what you have to do. The Internet's a wonderful thing that way. I would have to say I'm not going to rubber stamp his complaint. I didn't really look at it. I did see he made a couple of excellent points, which is what exactly he was supposed to make. Whether or not he supported those, I have not looked at. Didn't have the time this quickly to do this with the other things I was doing this week. He essentially says, the one line I found, the TSA failed to follow the Administrative Procedure Act in promulgating the rule, which requires public participation. So simple. And he's got it down pretty nice. He doesn't go on and on. It's only a 3-page complaint, I think. Although he did follow up with a motion, I'm a little confused as to why, but notwithstanding that, it's a 3-page complaint. And he essentially says the rule is invalid and you need to stay, he calls it a stay the imposition of that mandatory body scanning. My point all here is that there's Jonathan Corbett is one guy, a young guy. I think I found him a little bit. He's decided he's going to go train he's getting into this so much, and he's taking a pretty cool attitude. The last complaint he just sent in was sent, I think last Friday, and he sent it, last Friday, and he sent it as a package with a bow and Christmas wrapping. So this is the attitude I want people. I mean, we don't talk much about how this works out, but you can really kind of get into what you're doing and just get your jabs where you can. He writes a simple petition for review. He does a motion thereafter. You see the documents on his webpage of him sticking it to these people. He was, what was it now? I can't remember. He said something on his webpage. He used to be, where was that? He changed his name. He was something about get the DSA out of your pants or something. That what he used to go under. But he's wanted now he's got an online course. He's going to up his training. He's got an online course in California that teaches him the law. He's talking about going through and taking the preliminary bar and then the final bar for California. Now, I wouldn't go that far. The point is that online he's able to get the knowledge that he needs to do it more properly, at least more properly the way I've seen you should do stuff. I want you to know about. There's people out there that have been fighting. Whether or not he's ever heard my broadcast, I don't know, but he's doing exactly what we can do. Those of you that travel, those of you that don't like it, don't think that this is a proper thing. Those that just want to engage, just to see what it's like, can do this. And he's going to go to the court with this complaint and say, listen, the TSA simply did not follow the rule for the Administrative Procedures Act, the law to promulgate the rule. Title V, where you want to go look at that, Title V of the United States Code is the Administrative Procedures Act, and there's various provisions of it throughout the code sections. Here's someone doing something, folks. This is not outside of what we can do. And it's no threat, actually. And he's enthusiastic about it. I appreciated more his sending his complaint as a present to the TSA than probably anything else that he's doing, knowing that this is not fun. This is not something that we should do, and yet it's something that we are required to do if we want these people constrained to the place that the law says they need to be constrained to. I didn't read far enough to see whether or not he advances the concept, and I don't know that he would have to, on the promulgation of the comment that the rule for mandatory opt-in body scanning is the minimum that needs to be done. I don't know that whether or not, and this is just my thoughts, I haven't really gotten a chance to read all his document. I did not read his motion to stay order, which is a little bit longer, whether or not he does the presumption of guilt versus the presumption of innocence discussion that is not a minimum incursion into your liberties. I don't know whether or not it's the definition of so-called traveler is properly placed in the context of what people do. Because a traveler would be someone that's really not subject. It's only the commercial entities that would be, aren't they? And they commercialize you by calling you a passenger. You're a passenger in the context of commerce, these commercial airlines. You see how they've changed you. You move out of your private nature into the legal nature. It's really subtle how they do this. Anyway, I'm kind of excited, especially when I see a present sent to the TSA. That's a brief. I got a little bit fired up about that. Just the enthusiasm to come up with that and get beyond the drudgery of it to make it fun was impressive. But you're not helpless. This is really what I've been doing, try to empower you, to show you, if we haven't been told before, there's evidence around us. It's in the news. What they call the news is the notice of what's out there to do. The internet expanded that, gave us the ability to be in touch with all kinds of people, finding out what all they're doing. It's really a shame that the baser parts of the internet have kind of risen up, and I'm hoping we will learn better how to negate all that and move forward, use the internet as a fantastic tool that it really can be, to just bring a better peace to our lives, something that we really were, we promised to ourselves. We did promise, like I said, we jumped across the pond. They told us, we were told that we left the England for the better way. You know we didn't. But so I said we landed with both feet on the shores of the Atlantic Ocean, jumped across the pond, just hit the sands right in the surf line, and fell backwards. That's where we are today. We haven't got up and made claim for what was promised to us in the so-called separation, which I've identified for you was no separation. Go look at Article 6 in the Constitution, not the Bill of Rights, the Constitution, Article 6, and you'll see prior debts and engagement, which is the servitude, linkage, debt that you, as a political debt as well, that your country here, so-called your country, United States of America, is attached to England still. The debt inside of which I have not found evidence of being paid. In fact, I did find that it was never paid, which should tell you that, as I tell you before, all this stuff is a repeat. A lot of times, debtor, not a master be. You cannot be a master if you're in debt. And the Sixth Amendment says you're in debt. So this country started wrong. We have the opportunity to throw all this off if we would just do so. We have the tools that are been given. We have a deeper hole to dig ourselves out of. The stinking abyss is swallowing us. It's up to us to crawl out. You have a republic if you can keep it. That was the challenge. That's what I told you last week. That was the license the plunderer uses to hurt you. Till today, folks, hundreds of years later. It's really, really fascinating. Another thing that really, just breaking news, thank you to Grimner, actually. Again, some of these tools I really don't know. I was up in our chat messages. I had to be told to go look, so I didn't mean to not see that. And thank you to Meisterbrow for letting me know. But listen very carefully to this, folks, and you're going to see another example of how this bar association, these judges and these attorneys who try to profess to be the people who know the law, how they're just nothing but a monopoly business. This is a serious admission here. They're going to try and downplay it, but I'm going to suggest to you, when we sued the Bar Association in Oregon in 2013, and we told what we did in our complaint for injunction. We didn't sue for money, folks. We sued for an action to stop a wrong. That we identified the Bar Association as a state agency to be liable to their misdeeds. They couldn't use the government to protect them. We just get an admission of a response from the Washington State Bar Association, not relative to our suit, but you have to understand what we were doing. That the only thing I was concerned of in our suit was that they would come back and say the state bar and all these people in government were going to be immune under state immunities. State immunity gives them the cover. We argued despite that, and we did it so because on the contingent, I knew we were going to have to look at that. Well, I didn't think that they weren't going to answer. Again, we're in default. They're in perfected default. They've lost. But in anticipation of an answer, that I anticipated they were going to come back with a state immunity. Our out was going to be as trustee to our granted property as minors, that Congress granted, as their relationship in the admissions acts to the Congress with respect to the disposed soil. And we were grantees. The state government and the federal government are trustees. That they have no immunity against us as grantees. That was going to be my answer. I don't have to use it. Now I realize that with this admission by the Washington Bar, that will not be a technical response they could have given all the way back to 2013. The Washington State Bar Association has directed its ethics committee to stop issuing ethics opinions that could be interpreted as having a restraint on trade in legal services market. A restraint on trade in the legal services market. What a bombshell opening paragraph. Deborah Carnes, the bar's chief communications officer, says the move, you think these people are something important. They got a communications officer. The move is temporary, and I'm going to put big quotes around that one. According to the ABA-BNA Lawyer's Manual on Professional Conduct, the bar suspended the opinion so it could, quote, proceed very deliberately in the wake of the United States Supreme Court ruling in the case involving teeth whitening. Carnes told the publication. Teeth whitening, folks. If you don't think this has ramifications across the board, what is teeth whitening? What's a board about dentistry have to do with the Bar Association? Until you look at it from a standpoint that they're a trade monopoly in the position of an agency of the state. And then it starts to become more clear what we actually sued back in 2013 to stop the nonsense. At least, make the record, get the judgment. We're not talking our opinion here. We're talking to a judgment that we can point that the participants in the case trespassed the case, tried to render decision on the case, tried to interfere with the case, and they were all parties to the case. And they didn't dissolve the injunction that was perfected 2 years later. The fascinating proof here. What does whitening teeth have to do with any of this Bar Association having to stop a restraint of trade? Well, they're talking about legal services, aren't they? The legal services market. This is all you're dealing with. And thank you to Ron earlier. I just read, he was reading some passages. When he read the part that said that they had to promote justice as the right thing, I read that a long, long time ago. That statement alone, as he identified its importance, that told me the whole scam. It's just another promotion. And that's what lined me in on what the UN does and what the gangrene does and what all these sustainable development crowd does. It's nationwide. They get you to put the gun to your head and pull the trigger. That's what it's all about. They get you to believe it's the right thing, and it's a plunder again. That's why I keep telling you, cease to walk with as an accessory to the crime against you and pull the ring out. Maybe people don't like hearing that. I don't know. The February decision allowed an antitrust action against a state dentistry board for its clampdown on non-dentists who whiten teeth. The court said that when a state board is controlled by active market participants in the market it regulates, state action antitrust immunity can't be invoked unless the challenged restraint of trade is affirmatively expressed by state policy and the policy is actively supervised by the state. That's a mouthful. That's an exception that I don't think they can do. How do you separate the state from all of these people? This is it. They're setting up another problem here, but you understand this is a restraint of trade. Restraint of trade. What they're doing in legal services is not law. It's a monopoly on your life. They don't have immunity. We sued against this in the state of Oregon, but our lawsuit goes deeper because it talks about supporting sustainable development and the grant funding streams. That goes all the way back to Washington and then reflects back out. How does it do that? Through the Solutions Network as one part of the Solutions Network is an EPA condition that funds all these things through their grant funding streams. The bar allows it. The bar is simply a trade organization, I keep telling you. This case is very important. I don't know where the limitations are going to be. I actually wasn't going to talk about it. I told Grimney I would need to read it later, but this became, so, as I was thinking, just coming up to the broadcast, this became so important just to let you know of. That because it's dashing the reality for you and beyond, folks, beyond your, oh yeah, they're corrupt. No, we have to get beyond the dismissive state into the state of, wait a minute, you folks are actually felons and committing treason against me and everyone I know and everyone I don't know. And you can't be, I'm going to say this in the affirmative, you can't be all right with that. I hope you can't be all right with that, because I don't know what you'd be if you weren't, right? You'd just be part of the enemy. I'd rather have you be my friend. I really would. I'd rather have us all understand they're dividing us. This is what divides us. We got to drop all this petty nonsense. I think we're talking in the UCY chat, which has a new address. You guys can find it. Go to the old one, and they're jumping over. I guess the old one had a problem. It said that Colbert before, he said this is showing that 2015 and 16 is the divide and conquer. I've been telling you that's what the tool is since 2013, and I've been saying, and I said in the chat room, 2016's got to be where we stop that. Stop the divide and conquer. We're gonna have to do that. This is a very important case. I'm kind of excited about this case as well. Again, no crickets here, folks. These are things that happen that you can use. Notice in the news for us that give us every opportunity to call out the tyranny against us. It's real. It's not an opinion. This is it's a conspiracy, but it's no theory. And it's kind of beyond conspiracy. This is open, organized, syndicated crime. Okay? We can call it all kinds of names. It's just crime. And we go and you read the history books. You look at ibanet.org. You look at the history. If that's still available, you see exactly how they are still available to every player in the world that's got any seated decision, or presumes so. The authorita. That I tell you now, challenge at every point. Challenge at every point. Everyone. Now, you may have to use the rules of the occupier, but do that. Don't think you're gonna blaze the trail. And what I want to remind you, what we had to do in our strategy to address this, I could not attack the system itself directly. We had to attack the system collaterally. Understand this. I just can't go into a lot of this to really explain it on the air. It almost exasperated. I just got exasperated. You really have to think about how they've trapped us. And, well, it's not a trap. You think it's a trap. There's a way around it. And so you don't attack the bigger enemy, the more organized enemy, directly. You take out its foundation without its ability to be able to protect it. And that's how we did that. That's why I think they didn't answer. They didn't want to open a worse one, folks. When they saw we attacked the foundation, they didn't want to open up the rest. They'd have to now come in. They'd be susceptible to actually confessing on a record somewhere, notwithstanding it's held by their own corrupt system. As you also heard, the law was set up for intent before to hang and quarter that guy, Thomas or Thompson, whatever his name was. He was smart enough not to say. Right after that, he said, "I'm not talking," and they forced a confession anyway. They forced a confession by liars on a testimony, right? This is the game. You see the game. You have to get understanding about how this works so that you can understand every nuance and trick you think you can find that they do, that you have to sit back and really contemplate. Okay, they have all these tools. How do I avoid every one of them? Talk about a puzzle. Talk about a chess play, a master chess player. You really have to just sit back and think about this. And these people aren't that smart. And you know why? Because they're devious. They don't have truth behind them, even though truth got slaughtered that day with the guy being hung and quartered. But did it? See, this is the thing. The idea never fails. So I'm excited a bit about this. I have to do a little bit of research. I'm going to have to get into this little sideways course that they've made when they made the exclusion, but where the affirmatively expressed by state policy. I don't think that state policy can lawfully make organized crime against you. They can't make that an expressed state policy. Now they have. Don't get me wrong about the realities. They have. But that will not stand the light of day, right? This is what the Bond case is so important. The Bond case, and I don't remember the years, and all forgive me on this. I've got so many other things I've got in my mind, but the Bond case was the one that just happened recently. I reported here, maybe 2011, 2013, somewhere in there, that showed that people underneath the 10th Amendment can stand to defend the people in the place of the state where it fails on particular issues. This is what another case we were going to bring forward. So it must have happened in 2011. For our case, I was going to say, okay, that decision, that question, it shouldn't have been a question. That question was resolved in Bond, that people can move against their state when they don't do it correctly. When you're essentially gone to self-help, you have that last little bit to go and speak for the people themselves when the people in the state have failed. So these are powerful positions. This is going to be another one, I think. I don't know the limitation. I don't know where they're going to go protect themselves. They talk about temporarily working within the context of waiting to act deliberately. So when they come out and act now, they put it on record. When they act contrary, you'll know that it was intending and knowing that they're going to continue the crime. So inside this statement, the second paragraph is their future culpability and what you can hold them to. And remember, this is just an organization, an illegal entity. They're not within the state. My first question was, what about all these cases they have against people helping other people, and then they get these people for practicing law without a license? Understanding law, yeah, what is that? Understanding Grimner put that in there, depending on what they say law. Well, it's not. It's legal. It's what they make up for what they want you to do. But what about practicing law without a license? Is that not a restraint on trade of legal services? Notwithstanding, it's not talking to the law that they're talking about. You also identify that ones that are speaking to law are not speaking to legal, because they're not in law. They're in legal services. They're in legal services. They're no different here, folks, than a hairdresser who has access to your deep pockets, your bank accounts, your property, and your way of life. How's that? They can really give you a haircut, can't they? But they're no different. And you understand this, folks. And then the other question, what about the license to practice law? There isn't one. I don't know if you know that. There is no license that they issue. And that's just another deception, because they're supposed to issue one. Well, apparently, unless that policy is okay. If crime and organized criminality against you is okay in your state, I guess they get to do it. That doesn't mean it's right. So, again, interesting stuff. Breaking news to me, so I don't have that much of a deep analysis. I'd rather, because this is very serious, I'd want to give you a better, deeper analysis. But you have to understand the authorita. We're in a time and an eon now. The authorita is not, folks. It's not. It never has been. They got us to believe it was. It's time we step up. This is the year I've been talking for years. This is the time we step up on even the most trivial thing, I think, where authorita steps up. And it's only the color of an authorita. Has no substance actually behind it. That's a felony. It's not just a misdemeanor. It's just not someone committing trespass. It's a felony. That's how high level it goes immediately when it comes by the color of any authorita. And it reminded me, just as I said that, I didn't realize it, but there's a whole South Park setting. I don't even know the characters, but I was sent a link. This issue of questioning authorita by a little character has been like in the comics or cartoons for quite a while. So that should give you the notice, folks. This is a cartoon. Question authority. It's not that difficult. Do it on the most simplest points, too. You don't have to get real technical. The Jonathan Corbett is putting out a simple complaint that says they just did not follow the Administrative Procedures Act to promulgate the rule. That's his complaint, essentially. It's not that hard. That doesn't take 1,000 pages to write. He did it in 3 sheets. I didn't even read it for his substance. I just was looking at the fact that he did it so simply. It's just the way the point of the cause was right. And if he's a pro se and doesn't have his license, and if he does, they're not necessarily, that's no protection now. You see that because you become a bar member doesn't mean you get a license to practice law. That's not a license. It's only to do a legal service, right? You're only an agent. You're never the principal. They're telling you all this stuff. Even if he goes there, he might be doing himself a disfavor. But even not going there as so-called pro se, the court has to give latitude on the errors that he has. He just has to know his point. The point is whether or not the TSA followed the APA, the Administrative Procedures Act, when it promulgated a rule. That question, to stay that rule, is open to you in the thousands and tens of thousands of rules that have ever been made. Forever, you go back and you say, hey, they didn't promulgate this rule. And they're violating people's rights, because those rules, the promulgation process for rules is the protection of your due process. Simple stuff here, folks. It's not that hard. Now, so you step up. Be careful, though. Here's the caution. I've been trying to tell you how to do things without getting without making yourself vulnerable. I'm not so much anymore into the first line of defense is your sacrifice, because you've heard me say how and why that can happen. It doesn't mean that we won't. I don't. But you pick your battles. Not you just pick the battle. You actually pick your way through the battle as well. It's very important. But be careful when you put yourself on the front line. As we were seeing the military, the cops, the military execution squads moving from report takers coming after the scene of the crime to make a report that's supposed to give you the evidence that you can proceed for your victimization harm or the accountability to this legal trades association. When you don't get limited liability and you come up as a good Samaritan and step up, the report takers are becoming executioners of the good Samaritan. And there might be a reason behind all that. But be careful. Here's a caution. With all this stuff I'm telling you have the right to do, be careful doing this one. Not to back you off, but be aware. The battlefield is a much more dangerous place with these low IQ mentality cops getting jobs, because the Supreme Court also said that's okay. You can be too smart and too psychologically stable to be a cop. Be careful. Hero security guard diffuses hostage situation only to be fatally shot by late arriving cops. I guess they were upset they couldn't make the reports about some crime. But be careful, folks. This is the day. I told you this was coming. We've reported it before. This is no joke. This is a sad thing. This is what the reality that you live in, and it's been fostered by these trade services associations and their monopoly on your life through their laws, their legal system, which that restraint of trade case also speaks to something else, that these states are corporatized. I can identify about 26 of them for sure. I didn't have that much more time to go look at the rest. You have to search out those, where you find that in 1953, the Model Business Corporation Act was substituted for the permanent laws of the people. That substitution was a corporate act to bring the corporations on. At that point, all legal entities ceased to have protection underneath the old law, and if you wanted protection, you had to have an application into the new regime. We talk about regimes in Assad. We have a bunch of them right over the top of the United States. And this is probably everywhere where democracy and rule of law has control of your life, because it's supposed to actually be republics representing and protecting independence. So the situation here is shown, and this came up in the response to the so-called senior judge in the case that he answers, where he didn't even have a court to reside in or preside over. See, he's doing the residence, not you. That this condition sits in there that is to be challenged, and if you don't, you give it over to them. That these things work in your life in ways you never understood, and you believe them to be the authority, and they're not. They're but monopolies. These guys allow this kind of murder to go on. And you start to see that you live in an occupied territory, the corporate monopoly of which required you to be applying into it for the coverage. In other words, you looked at that year to see anybody who didn't became, what I have identified to you, outlaw. The people were made outlaw to the corporate regime, and then they were imposed upon to get protection. That's an organized criminal syndicate. You get protection. They didn't need to do that, but they didn't understand. We were dumbed down way back when. And so they took on this status they give you to bring you in. And this restricted trade case is about that. You may not be able to go outside your applicants and permittees and licensees to destroy someone else. This is a very big issue here that I was talking to you about Washington, acknowledging a restraint of trade may be something that their ethics opinions can't restrain with respect to someone outside of their system. That's what that's speaking to. Powerful stuff. But right now, getting beyond these people have made your life so grand that you can go out and protect something. You can actually do what the cops used to do. De-escalate something. Solve it. And they'll come and shoot you. And I suppose they want this way because they want people to be victims, and they want people to be criminals and get away with it until the cops come to do what? Put you in the system. Put you in the system. Why? Because it's more human resource, right? It's more of what's going on. There's a story about the fact, and I can't remember now what I thought I had it. About some law firm has looked at this and said that talking about the rates of incarceration in the United States. They're admitting, as I said years and years ago, you live in open air prison, they say a society behind bars. A society behind bars. How much different is that comment to what I say? I've been saying for years. Where did I get it? It didn't take me going to a legal services foundation in order to find that out. And then, though, there are people in that system that do have a scruple, that do have the actual morals, that finally just don't take it. And you'll see this occurring, again, it's not carte blanche criminality. Not everyone's a criminal, most of them are, but not everyone. So you look for those, and you just hope for the more of them. You hope their example spreads out. But Texas judge refuses to be part of a traffic ticket scheme, blows the whistle on policing for profit. So what's the notice to you? Not just that this judge came out and says he's still part of the bar, he's still part of that system, but he got tired of being pressured to make decisions that he knew were made for profit to municipalities. What's that telling you? All these tickets, this is notice to you that your tickets through municipalities are strictly for profit. We all know that. But now you have the judge that points it out, and you have the ability to what? Challenge authority. These are not courts of justice. These are banks. We've said that. You've heard it before. You have a way to prove it now. If you understand a subtlety here, I've been trying to. I do tell you, I'm trying in the point of reception. I hope you've been receiving this information in this way. This is proof that you walk into these jurisdictions and you can challenge them over all this. This is the evidence. Just get the link. Copy it out. You challenge them. How is your municipality not different than this? And you lay out the facts that present the problem. And I've been involved, and I kind of starting to slow up here. Maybe I'm not going to tell you too much about it, but I was involved with someone who got involved with a municipality where they were doing speed traps for the purpose of money for tickets for profit. And he had a little bit of background and training in what you're supposed to do in challenging jurisdictions and legal proceedings. And so he came to me and said, "Listen, I've been out of this a while. What do we do?" And so we went to task with it. They ended up getting the charges dropped. They were doing a cross-jurisdictional plunder anyway. And it was essentially and exactly this, that the money is gotten for running the county, the municipality. This was a city. So it took a bit of energy. In fact, we had to go to the Supreme Court on that one to do writs of mandamus and things like that. He did all that work. I guided it along. The point is that all these places are just banks. There's no law, and it's not opinion. And the long as we don't fight this, they continue to run to the tune of millions and millions of dollars of people being harmed by these systems that have been put in place. They've been allowed by the very bar association that has now been identified that's going to halt their ethics because it may be a restraint on trade for someone that does something outside of the services sector that they offer. Notwithstanding, it's also a state agency. What kind of a state agency is that, did you ask when I said that, folks? It's a corporate agency, isn't it? They're admitting these things right in front of us. Do I go and I argue in the first moment you're just a corporate officer and go to Hades? Well, no, that's not how you do that. Remember, I told you about the lizard. Don't ever forget about the little lizard versus the eagle. Again, it's part of the reality. The dose of reality you get behind the woodshed, that's part of it. I want you to know that to avoid it, but that means you have to engage it. Here's a judge that's telling you, Again, I just look at these stories. This is evidence. I'd put that together and I would just make the challenge. How are you not doing this when I've got this fact over here and you do this all the time as a municipality? How are you not just a bank? You're just the cashier for the bank. How can I expect justice? They'll rule against you, then you appeal. But your whole point is a jurisdictional challenge. They never answered. They have to answer all of them. See, they have to keep your confidence. This is the money. This is the currency everywhere for everything is your confidence, your consent. And they derive it through presumption and silence. It's very simple how this works. The license that was given by the statement, if you can keep it, for the people of the United States, is the key to the door for their plunder. And you have every moment to stop it. And I have to say start to stop it because it's so ingrained now. It literally is institutional. It's institutionalized organized crime. This judge, I don't know if I like him or not. I mean, okay, so he comes out. His whole reason for it was he could see that they were making money, and this was not about justice, and he didn't want to waste his time more to promote that. That was really his answer. It wasn't that he even went after anybody when he found they were doing it, folks. And he has the authority inherent in the power of his office to check the excesses of a different branch. Remember, I've told you about that. That was in our lawsuit as well. The government itself was supposed to check. Inherent power means immediate. They don't need any process to go through to check excesses of a different branch. This was the actual force and effect of a tripartite system. It was almost as if the tripartite system was more interested in what the other departments or branches were doing than yours, than the one that you were actually functioning in. But we've lost that. We've lost that since the corporate collective consequence I wrote about in 1999 or something. The current Middle Ages, you live the feudal system through the corporate collective consequence. So judge is telling you his reason was they just got tired of being told what to do about money. And when he was a judge, he had better things to do. That was his reason. But he gets to expose to you that that's in fact the case. You don't need quotas in a system like that, folks. That's the whole other point. You don't need to tell a cop to write a ticket. Just tell him that his money, the way his job may be affected. I told you this a long time ago. I tell you as a cop, listen, we don't have enough tickets coming in. That's where we derive your job. You need to kind of pick it up. I don't need to tell you to make quotas. You're going to be looking for every little infraction you can. And that's what seems to happen. Every broken tail light, every license plate light goes out. I thought I saw you without your strap on. Now they go, I thought the law allowed me to stop you, even though I didn't have any provision. Oh, besides, it's community care. Every license is given to the plunderer. And that is the license that was given to them under your obligation to keep the republic. We haven't been doing such a good job. So here, evidence, folks. This is a judge coming out. That's not crickets, right? Now we come to the problem. Fear, intimidation, and dread, folks. It's coming with all the stuff I've talked about. Now, I've set it up for you. I've set up all your foundation to understand all these things are addressable. And yet we're coming down, and I've got a question about this, and I didn't realize, time ticks, folks. I got so many tabs to talk about, I don't know. But time ticks, and I get onto timely stuff, and then it kind of goes away with the new stuff. In fact, a lot of the things I talked about early on, I wasn't going to talk about today because they just came on this morning. But was asked about this Real ID Act and the fact that they're going to impose this in the middle of January now. You can't travel, they're saying, if you don't have this. Real ID. If you don't have a real ID, you can't travel interstate, folks. Let alone anywhere. You can't get on an airplane, apparently. You can't get into a federal building. Well, I'll tell you what, I haven't been able to legally get into a federal building since I'd never had the so-called privilege to drive on the highways. I don't have evidence of that. It's called the little card they give you. That you think that's your license. No, that's the evidence that you have a license. Did you ever think of that? Have you thought that one through? The thing you hand to someone it's not your license. It's not your agreement. It's the evidence that one exists. That's the application. that if you don't have one of those up until the 16th, if you don't have one of those, you still already can't get into federal courts. You can't get into federal buildings that require ID. And I said, that's fine. That just shows that I'm different than you. But I guarantee you that if they want you before the judge, they'll come in through the back door to put you in without that document, won't they? And I've explained to you this ID, this driver's license, or an ID, they derive from the same authority. The ID is just a non-driver driver's license, and the driver's license is a driver's license. They come out of the same function. They are to identify someone who uses the roads by privilege, for business and for profit. The Real ID Act was to nationalize the form and the information that they gathered from this. That the agency now is saying in another rule, or by the end of the law, the Real ID Act in 2016 will make it mandatory to have a real ID card, not the one that your state does. Like countless of similar news stories recently, a report on Business Insider claims residents, here's the key, remember the words here, folks, this has always been critical, residents, notwithstanding it has to be in the state, and I've told you which state it is, but residents from 5 U.S. states could soon need a passport for domestic flight. The idea is that the Transportation Security Administration will begin to enforce the Real ID Act in 2016 by denying airport access to travelers from non-compliant states. Now, this article is from the Cato Institute. I was given a link. And it says, and this is the truth, it says it's not true, as I'm reading from it. Nobody needs to get a passport to fly domestically. No state needs to implement the Real ID Act national ID mandates. This is true. I want to direct you, though, once you get the link in the Blogcaster, and I think, unless what I'm seeing is the clicks is a little bit shallow, we have a little counter. Not a lot of people go to the Blogcaster, and this is where all your evidence is if you intend to do something. You need to track down this stuff, or you need to be able to sit down and type in and do as I'm, and get the notes and then go research and find the same article. But you need, in some regard, you need to read what I'm bringing forth to see exactly what try to find what I found important. Or in this case, I thought this article was a lot weak. Because within the article, if you're not really paying attention, they admit that the states ought to eventually. They don't admit and explain that there's a distinction between what the Real ID and driver's license exists for and whether or not any of us are in it, except that they do talk about these statuses called residents. And so the Cato thing kind of tries to write and tell you, don't really be worried. But let me suggest something. In reality, you may go to the airport soon, an emergency, or some other thing now that Real ID is now becoming the big boot, and they're going to challenge you. You're going to have to be prepared. And I ask you that if this is the case, that they're making this claim, no different than the professional pain in the arse that we talked, let's see, what was his name? The professional, what was it, Hitman? What was his name? What was his website? Corbett? The professional, TSA Out of Our Pants was his first site. And then now he's the professional troublemaker, right? He's the professional. He's taken responsibility. He's claiming it, folks. You too can be the professional troublemaker, and you don't do it just for yourself. You'll be doing it for a lot of people. But they put this act in, and they stopped your right to travel. There is a right to travel. If you read enough, don't do the motor vehicle stuff. You have a right to travel. Remember also, this jurisdiction is over the commerce traveling. They've mischaracterized the status in order to get you to be regulated, to put you under these requirements that force an association in violation of the First Amendment into becoming a state motor vehicle's privileged card carrier, when you are not. Because to get that, you have to go through the state provisions for this very same thing, except that this is a national standardized privileged card in a country that's supposed to not make a privilege, not supposed to have a diminished class. They are supposed to treat you equal, though. Remember, equal rights? So everyone gets treated to extortion. You don't believe me? Those of you that can't quite go read it for yourself. Those of you that know should be able to recite it. It's 42 U.S.C. Section 1981. 42 U.S.C. Section 1981. And really, not today. Don't disregard Section C that tells you that non-governmental agencies will be able to beat you down too by the very same point. There's the Bar Association. There's the university system. There's your state monopolies, trade organization services, all right there in the 1868 Act to give you civil rights. It's the right to equally be extorted against. It's right there written in the law for everybody to see that this is really just following on. This is all in commerce. Here you go, though. Jonathan Corbett, not James Corbett, Jonathan Corbett out of Florida. He gives you the guidance to go after this. If the states won't step up, then through bond you can too. AP news break, feds won't accept Missouri driver's license. So now they target these states. And the days before this, it was another state. Now the propaganda is out. They're going to try and get Missouri residents. What would we say here? The word resident. What is that? I hope you know by now. I hope you've done the study to figure it out. I hope you've listened behind the woodshed, taken notes, and really thought about it. I've also given you methods on how to identify you're not. I've also given you a location that you use in the post office that shows that you can't be. I've done all these things and more. No, I'm the Juice Meister salesman here, right, folks? I really have given you a ton of things, not guesses. This is what I've done. This is what I do. This is what is done by others. Missouri residents, soon. Well, if you're not, folks, is it relevant? So if you're not a Missouri resident and you know how to show it, or they don't have the right to impose upon you the status, and that's a felony against you, don't you have enough words in your mouth to argue this is a felony against you instead of taking it as an obligation? What if you're not a resident? Then do you still get to travel? Where's the rule that identifies that in the objective basis they use to identify non-residents that can travel? Non-business, non-legal entities in the state, registered with the state, will soon not be able to, Missouri residents will not be able to use their state driver's licenses for identification to get into most federal facilities, making it one of the least 5 states to lose a federal exemption from complying with national proof of identity requirements. What do you mean requirements? What happened to the independence of the states? We have a lot of power here in these statements. 5 states will lose their federal exemption. Who cares? Why do you want to get into a federal facility? Anyway, what's the relevance to you? And if you can't get in, then what? Fine. I can't be forced in either, can I? You need to take a different attitude here, I think. Who cares? Why'd they say most federal facilities? Why? Because the Postal Service is really the corporate post office. They can't get rid of that. That's how they get you into their courts. Oh, man. Fuck, I don't know. There is some funny stuff going through my head all the time. That one got out. The hypocrisy of this whole thing. The things they tell you that are the truth that we look right past, I guess, is that I've learned that you can't, that are sitting right there all the time. First here's the point. Through the last week, they've been pounding on this fact of the real ID. You're going to have to get a real ID. I want you to know and tell all of your friends, really look at that. You have to be a special status. It has to go through a special state condition. The states are dragging their feet because they understand that it's expensive and it's useless. It's a nationalization of an ID system. And they tie everything in. That's the big data thing coming as well. I predicted all this in the past, but these are very important things that you need to step up to do. Every state resident. See, now as a non-resident, you get to ask, well, you're saying resident. How did you identify? Where in the rules have you identified those that are not residents? How do we travel? This is the same question you do the State Department for those of you that want to leave the country. Why am I going forced through a port as a non-commercial entity? How do those of us that are non-commercial men and women, how do we travel without this nonsense? What's the provision for that? It can't be the same forms. It can't be an application. It's just got to be an acknowledgement, doesn't it? That's why I talk about the congressional grant to the miners. It's an acknowledgement of a pre-existing forbearance that miners had title to the minerals in the land over which they mined. Why? Because of the forbearance. And besides, it was a pre-existing obligation on Congress to dispose those soils. You see this language over and over. I just said a mouthful, folks, right there. People don't get this one. That's going to be one of the ones you want to go back and look at. These are obligations on the government. These are the limits on the government. People don't look at them that way. Since the highways are the same forbearance and the obligation that are owned by the county, and that means the people, the little C county is the people, are the highways. If it's a right to travel, right to construct it for the right to travel for lawful purposes, what's the license for? What's the grantor's right to come and impose? If you had these words in your mouth and go against the bar right now, you shut them down, just like we did already. No, but that's why I get silence, folks, when I talk to all these people like this. First of all, it's beyond their study. The attorney, all the professionals, they only have the blindered study. And then I come along and say, but there's a whole other aspect that you really aren't trained to see. You're trained to see your narrow, monopolized view. And yet we, the people, came from a general class, right? A general use that isn't regulatable. And you start really categorizing. So I say, put your thoughts in categories of subject matters, folks. It really does help. The only way you start seeing that, though, is to read a bit and start to apply and think about it. Really, I mean, when I say think about it, I mean, just ponder it. I mean, okay, well, if this is the condition, how does this play out? Work that through. Anyway, so I wanted to touch this. It's been a concern by some people. And thank you for the emails on some of this, and thank you for the response. I didn't get a lot of response on the mining law broadcast. It's not a dead thing right now, but I have to consider that. Not a lot of response. Maybe just the numbers of listeners. It's not enough big pool. I do listen to those that have concurred that they would like. I believe you certainly would if you're interested. But I have to now wonder how much time I can put in it when I've got this last week was a ton of things I had to figure out to do. And so it became, those of you I did not respond to and are listening, I apologize. I'll get back over to you, but just too much going on, too many, not enough hours in the day apparently. Even through, I mean, like I said, there's not really much of a holiday until we get some nice, stable, fundamental background of truth behind what we do anymore. I'm not so into wrapping myself around a lot of these concepts anymore. It doesn't mean I don't have my own belief system and what should be. I carry that internal and I act through that. And just at any rate. So to me, it's a working week this last week, and I do appreciate your feedback and thank you for again another listener feedback on the information helping you on court cases. I will continue to give the best information I can to let other people know that this is real. This is something you can do. We are literally not defenseless. We do have a war we're against, but even that can be addressed, and I know that's a little more technical, but folks, as I discuss this stuff, even as quickly as I do, the challenges, the evidence of what the limits of the law and the imposition are there for you to identify whether or not you've agreed to be that, whether or not that was a rightful that you did. I'm not saying that if you are a trucker, you're a trucker. That's a commerce. I will not destroy you on that. I don't know why your calling to be a trucker should be regulated, but that's neither here nor there. I understand there's abuses where there's a profit motive. That's not on the driver, that's on the company. Well, on the driver, they want to put more hours in, they want to get their load. So there is a regulation because we are creatures of our own endeavor, and we want to get things done, and we have to be regulated, if I can say it that way, a bit about the extent of that. And there's sometimes regulations can be good over our better sense. At least they're an objective basis from which we can act to judge. When you're in a truck for 10 hours, maybe you should stop. When you're flying an airplane for 10 hours, maybe you should stop. Maybe you should give yourself a break. Anybody who's flown, after a few hours, it starts to, and if nothing's going on, it starts to wear, that lack of activity starts to wear on you just as much, although your mind's going like crazy keeping up. But these things I tell you they're telling you the status, they're telling you the condition over these statuses, that they're telling you the limit as well, that I try to get you to identify. There's an answer to everything you identify that's wrong is an answer to why. It really is in the face of government. Either you've made some declaration, or they've presumed upon you some status that isn't so, or is so because you made a mistake. Those of you that didn't make a mistake and you have to go under the regulation, this is not a condemnation of that. You have to do that. But for all of us that don't do those privileged activities, those things that really maybe the better sense is to regulate, and yet the imposition by the state upon us in the same regard as if we're making profit, that's a felony. That's a felony. And so this is what they're doing. They're beating the drum of real ID. They want that real ID. They want that nationalization of identities in commerce. And they want your capitulation to that status. Most people in the country do not understand this. And this is the battlefront. And this is where they got to keep you. And when you see this, you start to realize what it is to be a man or a woman and what it is to be the legal entity that has your same name. And they show you by designating it in all caps, although that is a debtor as well. It's not just a legal entity, it's a legal entity debtor. Now you see the connection back to the legalisms for being in debt. And through commerce as well. Again, the United States is a political commerce entity, not the 5 elements of sovereignty, but one, under a servitude of commerce and debt. It's right in the 6th Amendment. Excuse me, I said it wrong. I didn't want to say that. It's right in the 6th article of the Constitution, not the amendment. No, we're not talking about the Bill of Rights. That came later. So these permits become important. Permit is the permission to pursue a trade, occupation, and profession. What is the trade, occupation, and profession that a gun license addresses then, folks? That Virginia is to no longer recognize concealed handgun permits from 25 states. As they start to divide you down, they're going to get this if you're not paying attention. They're going to nationalize lots of things if you're not paying attention. Until we unify, they're going to start peeling this away. Virginia to no longer recognize a concealed handgun permit? Are they presuming everybody coming in without it then to be felons? What about in your state, folks, the people in Virginia? How about, since they're going to negate the concealed carry for people that are outside the state, how about if you just all start open carrying? I understand, and I asked the question, I understand open carry is okay in Virginia. Look at your state laws. I don't want to get you in trouble. But how about if everybody in Virginia just start open? They want everybody to show their guns. Okay, we'll start carrying open carry. Because we're not going to allow an advantage to us over others that have the same right from other states, who have not been shown to be felons. They're presuming a crime on everybody. This is how this pre-crime happens, is because you allow it. That the permit definition alone is something in commerce that needs to be regulated. It is another point that no one responds to. And when you do, you're going to find these interlopers, these usurpers, these occupiers, these these militaries in your life are going to deny you. Why? Because they know what the truth is. That is why you have to go after them as well. The seat of decision is the corruption. There really is a law there that is an objective basis. We've allowed a usurper to take it over. But what about Virginia? What is it in Virginia there? Why don't they like it? They think they have good reasons, and the authority is in the state for all this. Since when is a gun a commercial device that needs a trade, occupation, or profession's license to operate? Or are you all bank robbers? They all consider you part of the organized criminal syndicate that they run? I think so. That's what this resident thing is, isn't it? Inquiring minds, folks. It's all there for us to act, but I try to explain that these questions are your cause. It doesn't have to be that complicated. Just ask a simple question. Well, if this is the case, then what about this over here? If your definition for license is the permission to pursue a trade, occupation, or profession, how come you have the authority, what's your authority, to require a gun permit? I don't use it in a trade, occupation, and profession. And what's your provisions for those of us that have guns that don't do that? That's a declaratory judgment in your state, folks. That's not even a court. That's a simple between you and the judge. Well, but I'd sue the Bar Association to begin with, but I mean, it doesn't matter. I mean, you don't sue in a declaratory judgment. You would question whether or not they don't have a vested interest, since the Bar Association is the brotherhood that believes in the UN that has the knot tied in the barrel of a pistol in a statue. That seems to be a direct conflict of interest. So I don't know where you're going to go with that except to think through that. I haven't thought about that yet, why I don't do that issue. I have a friend who does this gun thing, but they don't, and it's fine. I think he's doing it well, but it's a slow process. Outside the bar, even the governor doesn't want to address this. They know, folks. They know what they're doing is a crime. They can't let on. You have to know, not from question. You set the fact, and then you say, how is that not the fact? Declare that to be the fact. That's how you approach a lot of this. It's almost like in the negative. You go ahead to 180 degrees, and then you make that not a question, you make it a fact. And that's just a simple petition. Declaratory judgment, injunction. You can do a declaratory judgment that the fact is that this applies only to this kind of a thing. I don't think they'll give it to you, but you fight for it anyway. And then you put and do an injunction against the restraint of travel for those that are not provable to be in commerce. Wouldn't that be cool? Wouldn't that be cool to have people start doing that? Tie this system back up to where it belongs. Because we just let it out. We didn't restrain it. We didn't keep the republic. We didn't keep the government in the position of protecting our property and rights as a neutral place. They allowed the usurpers to enter into the office. Lawfully, they'll tell you that they got it and then destroy you. You look at the bill that brought in the Model Business Corporation Act in Oregon, and it was done arguably lawfully. And it says they substituted that law for the permanent laws of the people. Think about what I just said. They substituted a Model Business Corporation Act instituting a foreign corporation over the de jure people, and they permanently removed the people. How did that get done? And yet that's what they said they did, until you go look and find out that the word substituted in the statute is equal to supplant under international law for occupations and takeovers. Same word. How do you get at them now for state secret type, enemy of the state type stuff? How do you get at them? Courts have been saying, well, you don't know, and we're not going to tell you. They're not going to tell you, so you don't have standing. Well, another evidence. Maybe we do have it if we just pay attention. These whistleblowers are not the heroes that they are. They're just maybe more moral people in offices they found. We don't know their real motive. They may be trying to get back at a boss, and so they make a stink. And they find it's a way out. They can kind of get something for it until they run into Obama, the Obama nation that's now been created. Whistleblower just exposed how the government spies on your cell phone is evidence that you could use to bring a fact of this testimony, call this guy into court to put on the stand, that they know, that he knows how the government is intruding into your privacy to give you the standing to sue to stop it. How's that? Why don't we try that? That's what these whistleblowers are powerful to do for us. Especially where the government comes up like in this snow job Snowden and makes a big hullabaloo about it. That was perfect. That means that they found it important. If they'd have just shut up, you wouldn't have been able to do much about it. But they couldn't. But that's why I think it was also the snow job. I think we're still being played on all that. It was for true. They're really doing it. But that was to break it on the scene. Why? So they could get all this onto us into the way they needed it. They couldn't do it while it was still actually a secret. In that regard, if you think about that. They can't. There's nothing going on if it's still a secret. They needed an overt rule notice to you of how your life is going to be. They can't keep it secret because the law, so-called, requires notice to you. So if you can consider this, you realize the dynamic we're actually living in a bit. A new whistleblower has leaked a catalog of cell phone surveillance devices used by the military, intelligence agencies, and local police departments, including the controversial Stingray spying tool. The release of the secret U.S. document catalog of cell phone surveillance devices has revealed the names and abilities of dozens of surveillance tools previously unknown to the public. The category shines a light on well-known devices like the Stingray, a DRT box, as well as the names like Cellbrite, Yellowstone, Blackfin, Maxima, Stargazer, Cyberhawk, on and on and on. It's digital, big data world of surveillance, folks. And I told you to be careful. It's the corporations you've got to really be worried about, I think. So, what does this mean? I'm going to stop reading. I got this out of Anti-Media. For those of you, I heard a whoop whoop in the UCY for that site. This is what I'm reading it from. You can read it to yourself for yourself in the Blogcaster. So what do we use this for? What's the evidence, folks? Well, now it's the evidence that you know it's happening, and you can put that down as a fact. You would probably also need the some way figure out which device and which method your local jurisdiction is using. And then you might be able to get a lot closer at getting yourself standing to be able to argue to stop what they're doing where you're not shown to be some kind of actual enemy combatant, belligerent, enemy of the state, whatever the name they want to put on you under the NDAA. That will be a very important record to make as well, in case they silently find you out and want to drone you. So, again, these reports are evidence. They're elements to me that I look at and say, okay, we may not have had that before with Snowden. We have these other elements that we know that they're doing that's correlated now with this position with a whistleblower. You probably have to call him in as a witness, so you do it. I mean, who cares? I mean, just do what you have to do. Now, I would do this on waivers of fees because you don't want to pay for all this, first of all, but so I wouldn't have it. That's why you want to have no property of the world either. That's why you can do this as well. If you have to pay for it, you have to be very stingy on how you're going to proceed. You want your case to be as finite as possible because you don't want a lot of extra costs. But you have the fact now as a whistleblower. You can call him in or just get his documents to set the presumption that you could call him in to get your case and get standing against something that we have not been able to get standing against, which is secret state surveillance. Okay, evidence here in the news of what's going on against us. The technology that's being used, the fact that it's going on, and not that it's going on because we're almost admitting to that, aren't we? We've given up, haven't we? I'm saying this is beyond giving up. This is the way to carve yourself out, make that space for you. That may actually make the space for everyone. You identify and you get to you can bulldog these people to identify the resident as the limited status over which Real ID Act is, and that not everybody, in fact, most people are not actually resident, notwithstanding their deceived and misguided understandings of that they cannot be stopped from travel. You will have made so you'll be your own hero. You won't get shot by the cops either. That's the other thing that's kind of interesting about this. These are some important things where we were not crickets, where we have people acting, and we are crickets against these notices to us. We are crickets to these notices. We're not responding. And these are the notices that the first half hour or so of the broadcast were laying out as remedies and activities that we can do to stop the nonsense, this insanity. Those are, going to federal court's kind of a big thing. I'm asking you to consider something. If it's beyond you a little bit, find something more local. The same procedures applicable in all jurisdictions with these administrative procedures. Unless you know really more directly, like we did, that you're a trustee somewhere. And most people would land and know how to assign them, prove evidence, the assignment to them of the patent could do the same thing that we did. But most other people are sitting in a position of tenancy or regulation, that they have to look a little different at their cause and approach it with that extra constraint. It's not impossible. It's not a big deal. It's just that you have to factor that in because that can change the outcome immensely. In other words, you can't go into a permit condition challenge and expect to get your rights out of it. All you can identify is that it was wrongly imposed or you made a mistake and you rescind your signature. You got the evidence of that before you walk in, and that it was a mistake, and there's nothing they can do to turn that because it is on your consent. Mistake is an answer against your own consent, and you make a record of it. Now, if it doesn't apply, what are they doing to least affect you in your private way of life? So you have when you become a subject or a tenant condition, you have two steps to get to the problem, to the resolve. Instead of you're directly related, that they're affecting a property directly that they don't have a right to. That's on 2 points. That's a direct trespass against you, and it's also a felony if done in a color. So you have these applications and remedies you can pull right out. Are they going to agree with it? Absolutely not. But you have the power to keep sticking it in their face until there's more of us. And I say that with all experience. We have a default judgment against the state of Oregon, the Bar Association, the political parties, the university system, and they shut up. So we have to go scrounge them out. And we've now moving, as I said, we have to go do the enforcement. So that process was started here last week. And now we have to watch and see what happens. Wait to see if they're going to be able to respond. If not, we have to continue plugging away, folks. The invasion against you is just not going away. Look around the world. That's our evidence. The reasons for why that exists, the lack of peace on earth, it's beyond me. I'm really not wired this warlike way, really. I mean, I really do like what they've set up for us in a way, even though it's so abused as what it is. It still gave us a memory. See, they get rid of your memory about this. It's still in me, and I'm trying to tell you it's in you. This is the story you tell your youngins. We jumped across the pond and fell short. We have to hand the baton to them. I'm hoping before I'm taken out of this place, and we do a little bit more than that. We do leave a better place. At least leave them the traction that the people coming up behind us are going to need. That the world stage gives us the evidence of certain things unseen, things that are going on. I've been amazed this week with the Christmas propaganda going on between the media and RT and the Russian media bulling out this thing about Christmas, that we're now seeing Russia being promoted as the bastion of Christianity with its support of Christmas and the denunciation by America of this. It's become an issue. And I told you, watch this thing in Syria, Turkey, over to Russia, Ottoman Empire, this old historic stuff, and Istanbul, and right after the reflection of what's going on, the spiritual battle that we may be witness of historically now, in time of our actual witness of things majorly moving. My discussion of the thought of Istanbul rising, or Constantinople rising up again out of the ashes of Istanbul, comes out of a little video I found here a couple weeks ago, where there's a former Vatican advisor and Jesuit exposes Russophobic condition where the Vatican and Ukrainian Greek Catholics are actually different than the Western Catholics, that it is a problem for Russian monastery. This is coming from the mouth of someone who's been on both sides of that. The underlying war of which we may be witnessing, it looks more and more likely, folks, that we're witnessing this. It's unseen to our eyes. Just as I've been, well, more than what I've been reporting, but I wanted you to know to look there and don't look at the obviousnesses. There's something playing out. This little video I have, the gentleman speaks it out. He comes from America, actually. And he speaks out his history and what the condition is. I was, again, amazed at RT promoting Putin being part of the orthodoxy there. Now he's known as a man of the people. I've told you, okay, that's cool. I don't know about him. He's also of the world, folks. So be careful. He's got a duality. But he is getting favor of the people because of his connection and link to the monastic orthodoxy, which is spoken of to be a power in the world that isn't there and not over in America, which is being promoted, propagandized right now. That he will get his popular support as long as he does that, but he's going to have to do enough to maintain that support with the orthodoxy, that it may provide the impetus for what we see to happen, that we may see Constantinople rise up again and the Orthodoxy Church reestablished in face of an Islamic agreement. If you also notice, they were showing a lot of people, Muslim people. Muslims are the people, and Islam is the religion those people worship, is how I understand this works. That the Muslim people were in Christian churches to give support to the Christians. And it occurred to me when I saw that picture, it takes a little bit sometimes to actually see this stuff. Something that I would not be able to see without the internet. That these people have been living together for millennia. Been living together for millennia. That it's only the governments and the baser nature of states and governments that causes them strife between themselves. They're both Abrahamic religions. And there is proof that they live together, they can worship in support of each other. That did come out of RT. At the same time, they're showing all the destruction of Christianity, so-called, in the United States. That's the propaganda. But there's a truth. This Vatican advisor Jesuit, who goes through his little bit of history, it's only a 7-minute video. You'll see it in the broadcaster. Speaks to this very condition. It's a division. It's a glitch in the force. We necessarily have to be aware of in the United States because it's being used against us. Again, that division is another division. That's the way that it comes down. The stories that we're told aren't really the way it works out. Again, that's the propaganda. The Internet's going to be the wonderful thing to allow us at least perspectives from other people. Why I value Twitter at all is being able to find people that I could not communicate with in those lands and communicate with them directly, to hear from them their response. It's a really enlightening condition. Sometimes hard to deal with because of the languages, but it's really still, there's a spirit that speaks through people, that speaks through even the corruption of the translation. I think that's, for me, there's not many that I do this with on that, for that purpose, but the few people that I do have ability to converse with, they allow that extra insight that destroys the Western and Eastern propaganda systems, the governmental propaganda, and gets us back to ourselves, the people. And we learn, we know, we start learning again. We live with each other despite our difference in beliefs. It was kind of cool to see the Muslim people sitting in a Christian church giving support to Christmas and the Christian belief. Not really that much different because they're both Abrahamic beliefs. Now, if they've done that for millennia, in Syria, what's this war going on over there? And we get a little inkling of what's going on there by a story that came out for Libya. Thanks for destroying our country. Angry Libyans lash out at Obama's independence congratulations. Remember, Obama came out and did congratulations. We're going to let you form a government. And I'm not going to get into discussion. It was pretty consistent, what they say in this report, pretty consistent of what we could see was going on. They destroyed that place to get rid of it, to just make internal divisions, to cause infighting, and it got so messed up, not even the people there could straighten it up. That's when the government of the United States decided to let them have their own government. And the only excuse Obama says is, we underestimated the condition. This is the gift of rule of law and democracy that the West, Zio West, gave to Libya. It's in play right now because they need the oil that Russia's stopping in the other side to fund the ISIS. ISIS is moving into Libya now. This is why they're doing it. But the answer that we get is the United States and Zio West brought to Libya chaos because we, by their own words, underestimated what we'd done. Has got to be the biggest crime against people admitted that I've seen in an ongoing string of admissions and crimes to be admitted. The Libyans know who done them. Our only excuse was that we underestimated. Not to put any belief on you, any sense of emotion, but you can't feel good when you hear that. We've destroyed a bunch of people because even if it was the most innocent underestimation. Again, what did I tell you about do-gooders going over to Africa, showing people how to plant corn in the rich lowlands along the river? All this work goes in all year to keep the crops growing. They're big and tall, and right before harvest, right when when the crows show up, the corn is just beautiful, perfect. The elephant migration comes right a couple days before harvest, and they eat it all, gone, trample it down, and they're gone. And the natives laugh at the do-gooder whites. And they go, why didn't you tell us? And they say, well, why didn't you ask? Again, we go in overestimating our knowledge, imposing our will on other people who've grown up in that land, who know why they don't grow corn in the lowlands. But no, we have to come to impose. That's the innocent error. But you know that what's happened in Libya is not innocent. It's criminal. And it's from their mouths. They're saying, thanks for destroying our country. Merry Christmas, Libya. How you like that, folks? Merry Christmas. And I found this little statement, Stockman's Corner. David Stockman, Christmas 2015, why there is no peace on earth. I won't read it. The sentiment is there, folks. Just read it. It's a history. I don't have to go on. Why is there no peace on earth? We said, goodwill toward men, peace on earth. No, it's goodwill to war, goodwill to war. That's where we stop, not toward men and women. Goodwill to war is what I responded in the worldtruth.org feed with respect to a story like this. We go goodwill to war. We don't finish the sentence in this world. We don't go to the sentence goodwill toward men. We don't do that. It's only goodwill to war. Why is there no peace? David Stockman has it as his account. I thought it was fair enough. I think near the end he kind of consolidates the concept. You can maybe read for that. We're just not, we the people may be cool, may be good, like we might be all people, but the governments we allow are not. Let's read the last paragraph. So 100 years after the Christmas truces along with Western Front, there is still no peace on earth, and the long-suffering American taxpayers who foot the massive bills generated by the war party's demented and destructive policies have no clue that the Imperial Washington is the principal reason. Cluelessness is going to be, in history, our dreaded disease identified, hopefully for a non-clueless future people. I want us to stop that. That's why I hopefully bring Behind the Woodshed, which not as many people as I would like to hear it, like to hear that you're not helpless. You got to be more than clueless, because the cluelessness is a very serious disease. I don't know that there's an extrication that can be made. There's nothing that can pull you out of cluelessness. That might be an interesting thought for you, because I've thought a lot about it. I'm talking about people being set in their ways and set in their illusion until they develop a question, even the simple question and mind-expanding question of a why. Until they make a question, you will not get to them. It's why I tell you, don't attack someone with your knowledge and don't try to overwhelm them with a ton of knowledge. You got to entice them to respond to a situation, and you have to listen very carefully to a problem or trouble in their life that you're not the answer guru to, but that is something that you might be able to help fix. And we talked about the currency of confidence. We have to get everyone's confidence. The money between people, the currency between people has to be given value again. Our confidence between ourselves, the lack of division, the connection on those things that we can agree on, has to be invoked in those of us that don't know. At the time when on something we can make important. If we don't do it right there, I don't see much chance. We can't impose. The example is not to impose. The example and the obligation and the thing we had was to choose. We do that. We have to choose from proper knowledge, and we have to choose with an intention to choose, or the observation that we need to make a choice. If there's nothing in someone regarding those, it's not going to come out. So that's why I've learned, again, it's not a judgment. People are either open or they're not. They either know that there's a problem or they're not. You're not going to beat them over the head with the problem to get them to recognize that. That's the real difficulty. And we go into our most simple places, and I don't. Like I said, I'm not liking this, but this is something I found I have to do. I've made that choice. The choice, and whether or not there's a better way, I haven't been exposed to yet. That, I hear a lot of, you got to be peaceful. Well, I don't know about not being peaceful. I'm not killing anybody, but I can't stand around and watch oppressors, occupiers, and murderers and killers underneath the clothing of authority do those dastardly deeds and get away with it. Am I big enough to stop it all? Obviously, absolutely not. Is it kind of a fruitless endeavor? Well, if you look at it from the standpoint and the eyes of someone who hasn't actually endeavored and found some of the weaknesses, I suppose. If I was to tell you what happened to me when I had the analogy of the lizard and the eagle, although that was interesting, that was an emboldening time. But I mean, just the observation that you're going to be, most times you'll be that lizard. You'll have to make the decision: do they eat you for almost all your productive time, or do they take a little bit? You have to make that decision. So, looking at it from that standpoint, no, it's not very encouraging. But I've been a long way from there since then. I don't know what I do or don't do actually, but I do know that things are changing around what we do, and I do get your emails, and it's encouraging to see at least people stepping up for themselves in the minimum. And that's really all I'm asking. We just have to stop this nonsense. Again, we got the duality of having to engage this beautiful thing called the internet, even though it was set up as it was a military tool, I mean, this is a communication tool, a communication command and control system that was not able to be easily defeated. That was why it was designed. So no different than your highways. Your highways are not constructed to put big rigs down. If you notice the footage on the separation of the lanes, it has to do with the size of the tanks. Out of the 1956 Eisenhower Highway Act, I think if I remember, that's where the source of that is. So this is a military world. And partly, maybe rightfully so, because we got these people that are invaders. They don't want to leave everybody to their own. And then you find out the governments inside themselves don't want to leave anybody else alone, and that becomes our problem. How do we allow these people that are in our own governments to commit felony or treason against us? And how, I don't know how we do that. We just do. And the evidence that I now have is the fact that we agree that the bar is something to be a trade service monopoly to control your life, and no one says anything. I say no one advisedly. I didn't say no one. My co-party didn't say no one, and the Jefferson Mining District didn't say no one. And so there is the foundation from which we move. That these people literally are usurpers. They're occupiers on our land. They've imposed a life that's not for us. It's for them, the plunder. And they'll get you coming and going. And part of that digital life is what we're saying in the Real ID and all this information, the big data collection. Talked to you last week about John McAfee, talking about the coming cyber war with would be worse than a nuclear war. And then I told you be careful, because that's the declaration of the government's war against you and the switch they can flip. Well, it comes out this last week. HTTP 451 error code for censorship is now an internet standard. It comes on the heels, by the example of Fahrenheit 451, the burning of books. And so they now have an actual standard on the internet for censorship. Now, you don't think that they made that up and standardized it now after it sat around forever. Again, how long ago they were even planning to do this. It's now a thing that there's going to be an error code 451 made when you go to a site that doesn't meet somebody's censorship standards. This is the digital cyber war against you and the lack of information you're going to be able to get, and why you're going to have to figure out whether or not we can or not. I don't know. I was trying to deal with a WordPress program and a database here the last few days. It's supposed to be so easy. Everything's supposed to be so easy. I guess, yes, if you're a 13-year-old or a 12-year-old, got plenty of time. I don't know. But, it's a little bit more difficult when you got 1,000 things to do. And the tool that you're looking at is it's cool. And it does a lot of stuff, but maybe not quite what you thought it was. Not quite how you did. That you enter into systems that are beyond us. That is what they're also going to be able to use against us. The story I fell off from last week, and just getting to it now, again at the end of the broadcast with all this other thing to tell you. Actually, the other stuff earlier was much more exciting. Because it's us doing, it's the evidence of that people can do something. And be effective, too. This is not just doing for the sake of doing. But this cyber war against us, the ability to put us into a nuclear winter digitally in our lives, to take and put us into a confidence system that's able to be electrons, is moving through a system in the world like we see this with social justice being promoted and universality, and I've been telling you, watch out with of the world of BRICS, with Russia's involved with in China, that this is no different. We see evidence of this social justice credit-based system that I wasn't able to talk about last week. I got right up to it. That became a big thing here right after I got with my broadcast and a few of the chats. That they call this, and problematically, they call it, or it's advised, been discussed as the sesame credit system in China. And I find that term unfortunate because it turns down its source. It diminishes where the source of this is. Actually a social credit system that's being brought up by China. It's a government loyalty, citizen-based government loyalty system. That your credit will be based, your money, see, all credit is debt. Your existence is wrapped around debt. That it's already being a function as the world turns, in the world governance condition. China is already implementing this system of a social credit system. When you tie that to social justice, under the Sustainable Development or Agenda 21, the UN imposition, you'll realize how dire this condition will be in your life. If you ever make the wrong social statement, your credit goes down, and it keeps going down, and this becomes a way to control your behavior. This story, which I got from Information Liberation a couple weeks ago, goes through and discusses a lot of this. I'd like to have you see this, because this is in the world. They're working it in China. This is already the plan that I expected. It's almost in Europe all by now. But this is showing you that the IMF is no different in the BRICS. They're the same. They're eventually going to be brought together, and it's all going to be around supporting the UN and its corporate structure of the world. And the governments are already engaging it. When you're dealing in social justice, you're dealing in sustainable development for the United States of America, which they lied to us and said it wasn't Agenda 21, which it was. They told Europe it was Agenda 21. They didn't tell them it was sustainable development. Keep everybody secret. Keep all this information divided up so you think you're arguing against each other. And yet here's the components. Well, here, a social credit system is an important component of the socialist market economy system and the social governance system, as explained in June 14th, 2014, planning outline for the construction of social credit system issued by China's State Council. This has been in the works, is a component of a system. This is a serious thing. When I saw lots of people that were so-called alternative media using the Sesame credit, it was like Sesame Street. In fact, I saw some people commenting to the Sesame Street thing, analogy. It wasn't in meaning that it meant Sesame Street, but that's the point. You think it's something like that. No, this is actually social justice credit system under the new governance financial construct. And so do not underestimate this story here. In fact, you really should read about it. You're going to watch this slowly come on in different forms across the world, that it's already being mostly imposed. That, again, they're moving us from a physical currency, which should be our confidence in a medium of exchange, to digital, which is not controlled by us. So I found this next. So what do we got? We got social credit in digital, and they've been trying to get us away from cash. And so one of the ways they get you from cash is they tell you they don't accept it anywhere, or you just don't have it. And you watch that start to happen in 2008 with the collapse and the sucking up of all the dollars available to people, even in the funny money sense, right? So you don't have it to begin with. But what do they put you in? Then when you have nothing like that, they get you to transfer over into something that is usable to you, that they will almost give you. It's like the drug. They hand it to you. They hand you a few of this and a few. Oh, go do this and you'll earn these credits. You ever heard of that? That's that social credit system coming on. You don't put your time in the right place, you don't get any. And this story come about, what's the money in people's accounts, the so-called money? Approximately 62% of the Americans have less than $1,000 in their savings accounts. Through MarketWatch, Americans are living right on the edge, at least when it comes to financial planning. And I laughed. That's all I'm going to read. Savings accounts, I said. People have savings accounts? Financial planning? What the heck's that? savings accounts. See, this is the point. That's the system. They don't want you to have that stuff anyway. I had to joke at $1,000. That's a ton of money behind the woodshed. It doesn't happen behind the woodshed on its own, let alone having it for savings. And yet, people in America don't have 1,000. Folks, this is the thing I told you. This is the Detroitification of your economy. It's the destruction, the nuclear winter all over you, and you don't see it. It's irrelevant about the number in the savings account. That's a whole plunderous system you have involved yourself in anyway. But there's documentation that you really have to look a little bit farther down the road. They're moving people from cash into this social credit system, the evidence of which is already in China. They don't want you talking about something. They put a 451 on your website, and they deduct your credit somewhere on your Facebook social credit account. And you'll be judged by everybody else who's got a Facebook account about that. And if you don't have one, tough. That's why this little issue over here with the restraint of trade case is so important for those of you that aren't in the club. Did a penny drop for some of you when I just said that? It's not a silver bullet, but it gives you something to point out. If you're not in the group, you're not supposed to be disparaged. That restraint of trade speaks to you whether you really recognize that or not. It's the limit of their imposition. It's not a question. It's not a gripe. It's something they have to prove when they impose it. That's how you proceed. You turn them into the character making the attack. I've told you before, I don't walk into conditions as an issue. They're not a question for someone else to decide. They are the fact under which no one had the right to overcome it. They had no authority, and any authority that tried to, as I've explained, is a felony if it comes under the color of some official authority. And I would extend that to any color of authority. Even if I just lied to you, say I was the manager of the property, and I tried to take away something, that's a felony. The way I read the law, it's not limited. It doesn't say judges can't be hit by that, or attorneys. The Bar Association doesn't say that the governor can't be slapped with that, or a local representative, or a non-local representative. No. Not even a federal. They're not immune. So, that restraint of trade case, get that link from the Washington Bar taking a step back. Uh-oh, we might be caught here. And don't think it's done yet. Like I said, we're in this war. Maybe people don't want to agree with that. There's no peace on earth, folks. Washington is the problem. Listen to David Stockman. It's worse than that, but it doesn't matter. Take it as small as you can to still continue, so you don't let the idea of an oppression beat you down. You stand up and take the tools you have. I try to bring them every week. Don't do what's coming to you under the social justice system that suggests that a web training collar will be put on you that you'll accept, that shocks you when you visit an insecure site. So not only will you see 451, the notice is on you now, you're going to be wearing a shock collar. That when you went there, in your job, you're going to get shocked to control your behavior. This is a digital world, the Internet of Things, folks. This is right here. It's fascinating. It's hilarious at some level. And people are going to do it. Why? Because I know most all y'all have driver's licenses. And I know most all y'all don't do that for a profit. And don't do that as a laborer. Remember that. The laborer is under Title 29, U.S. labor. For those of you that are minors, this is how you can tell very quickly that the MSHA is not applicable to your mine where you don't have either a coal mine or other related mine or employees. And don't let the inspector on, because that inspector becomes an employee by presumption of law. So just keep them off your land. No trespass. MSHA doesn't apply. Why? Because you don't have any U.S. laborers under Title 29 there. It's really simple how this really works when you see it. But you're going to wear a shock collar in the future, folks. It's going to be around wherever they put it, your neck, your arm. You're going to agree with it because it's going to give you the social credit to be in your job. I'm not going to read the story. This is where it's going. Corporal punishment to be on the wrong website. That's cool. That's part of your job. You want that job? You'll wear that collar. You want to eat? You'll wear that collar. You want to have something to say? You're going to say it socially justly, and your credit will be maintained. It maybe will give you a little bit more if you put a plug in for the government. Otherwise, Obama can continue his assassination program in secret, even against Americans. Other news. This is where it's at, folks. I don't even want to read. I just read the story, the title. You read the story, it says the same thing. It explains how the courts have allowed assassinations in these private secret courts. Why? Because they told us in the memo I read to you many months ago, they went extrajudicial. The courts essentially are irrelevant too. I don't make this stuff up. I don't have any shining light. I just go read what they tell me, and because they're bigger than me, I believe it. I don't agree with it, but I believe they can pull this off. Now we have a reality that we have to deal with. You don't get socially justice. You don't. Your credit, your social justice credit goes down to zero. That means you're not very loyal with the government. You're an enemy. It's all going to be objective, digitized proof that they're going to use. Oh, he didn't have any social credit. We told him we 451'd his website. We took away his money, and he still was not given the kudos to Obama. So Obama was rightful to drone him. I know, it sounds fantastic. But to tell you the truth, I didn't really realize they would actually go extrajudicial, and they did that. How did they do that? And I think I'm going to stop right there. I have a lot more to talk about, but I think that was a nice rundown to where this is actually going in the it sounds fantastic. Why would a court allow assassination of Americans without due process of law? If you're not in a militarized occupational territory, if not, I still don't believe it's conquered. James Montgomery, excellent. You made look him up. He had excellent discussions on all this. I've never talked with him, but in a way I wish I did. I don't even know if he's still alive, but he said we're a conquered people. I kind of hold out that we're not. I kind of hold out that we still have a chance. We're not completely destroyed. But we're acting like it. But I think we have a chance. And part of that is going to be combining together where we can, uniting with those that we can work with, understanding there's a bigger thing that we're against to clean the slate and get us back on the track of where we need to go. But we're only going to do that by getting experience. The way you do that, as I've been trying to explain, you can do that administratively. There's no real threats here. You can question them. You're not even going to, you just say you're going to travel and that this thing is going to be an imposition over the TSA that isn't been promulgated by a rule. You want to enjoin it until we have the right to come in and find out whether or not it was the minimum that they could put on us. You get to do that. There's no threat to you to do that. And you get to engage and have experience on how to address authority. Thank you for tuning in today. Hope that was helpful. Get engaged. This is going to be the year we got to continue and do this. It's really close. Where you can, donate to finances to the servers, reallibertymedia.com, and the broadcaster and the archives from Grimner, and the work that he does to keep it going, and worldtruth.org, the servers that you're hearing, and the count from Spreaker. That doesn't come by $0. That comes by a cost. There's other contributions you can make to Jules as well, possibly. I know, like Vince Easley. Thank you very much for the support and the promotions that are going out, and the other people that do that. The broadcasters need all this. We're self-produced, and we can't do some of that. We can only do so much. The broadcasters that are terrestrial, thank you very much. Folks, you can tell people to put me on as a what do you call it? A syndicate, a time slot. Just tell another network. We get the word out. Your help there is instrumental. So thank you for tuning in today, and take as you can and do your best to do what you can. And we'll see you in the new year. How fast did that one go, folks? Take care.
Well, that's another lesson
I hope with today's information you can take it to those that misbehave. From behind the woodshed, leaving his mark on the beast, this is Hal Anthony. Till next time, journey with purpose.
So that's what opening up a can of whoop-ass feels like.
Son, you just opened a whole case of whoop-ass.